Well, when I'm working, I just work mostly by instinct, and it's a way of sort of survival to get from one point to the next. So if I'm balancing sometimes what you might call rational ideas or processes with instinctive things, that may be how it seems from the outside. I'm just obviously very moved and touched that this has been felt by listeners, by others, and this kind of recognition is very rare and very encouraging, inspiring in our field. Well, I like my music to be timeless and, if you like, free of place or time, and free. And I think that the problems facing someone like me when you stare at a blank page, thinking what happens next, or however it may be, are in some ways the same problems as would have faced anyone in 1400 or 1826 or 1603. It doesn't matter. What do you do next? What's the next step on the path? How do you continue to plough this field, whatever it is, in a way that is right, that makes some kind of musical story? So if I find myself using one or another structure or pattern that is available to me, that's just the way it is, so be it. And I think that one has to remember that if you use an analogy like medicine or whatever, that there are huge advances in what we know, or how we do things, but we're still dealing with the human body. Well, I grew up, if you like, with surrealism all around me because my mother is a historian of surrealism and has written books about, for example, Salvador Dali, whom she knew. And it struck me today that actually the first time I ever saw any land that was not the island on which I was born, Great Britain, was Spain. We got a boat when I was a very small child in the mid-1970s across the Bay of Biscay, and there was Bilbao. It was the first time I'd seen another land. So I mean, for a small boy, for a small child, that I suppose means Spain in some ways always was the archetypal island or another place on the horizon. And that might be, when I'm working, what I think to myself always is, I want to find new lands, or if you like, set sail towards the horizon, towards a new horizon in the work I do. So it may be that at some level, Spain is the kind of archetype of that for me still. Well, composing is essentially a solitary activity that you spend what can seem endless hours and days and weeks at home working on this score. The score is really just a map of a soundscape, or if you like, a blueprint for a vehicle which is going to be the piece. And that only really comes to life in performance. So when I go out into the real world to conduct the piece, I am able to present it in a way that I suppose is a more idealized way, and I can show with my gestures, I hope, as best I can, how I intend these sounds to be. And it's also, of course, nice for me as an essentially someone with an essentially solitary job to spend time with people, with actual musicians, and I love the moment of, if you like, contact between what can be sounds that only exist in my head so far, and then I transfer to a sort of code on paper in the musical notation, and the contact with somebody holding a violin or hitting a drum or is very exciting. And I think if I'm conducting, I can say, you know, actually, could you hit it there rather than there, or could you play the violin in slightly more like this here or there? I can say, get as close as I can in the time available to what I want.